Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit differently. In the year of 2024, I have been tracking my eyeshadow palette usage. And I'm going to just talk about like why I decided to do that, how it's been working, where I'm at with palette usage, what my goal is, and just kind of some general thoughts about how it's been going and how honestly like insightful it's been. So if that sounds interesting to you, be sure to stay tuned. Like I said, I know it's a little bit different, and I feel like this is something that is gonna play more into my project painting audience, which is why I'm doing it. I'm a project painter. So I just thought it was very interesting and very eye-opening. So I wanted to share with you guys my process because I actually got the idea to track palette usage from another creator, and it has been absolutely game-changing. So I wanted to share in case this might be something that would also be up your alley. So like I mentioned, I got this idea from another creator in the community, Lee, and I will have her linked below, and she's also like at the bottom of one of the notes that I'm gonna have here. I'm gonna be displaying the tracker over here on this side so that you guys can see along with me. The reason I wanted to track my palette usage this year was, one, I was inspired by Lee, but two, when I started going through my collection at the beginning of the year in January, I was like, I'm pretty sure I've only used this one time, or I'm pretty sure I've only used this 2 or 3 times last year. Like, it felt like I had not used it at all. And then, you know, palettes I felt like I had used a lot. I was like, well, did I use them a lot? Like, because other than like a solid handful, like I couldn't really tell you if I used them a lot or not. So I thought by tracking it, I would more easily be able to determine what I am actively reaching for and what I'm not. That'll also help me moving forward when I'm considering like what I want to keep in my collection and what I want to get rid of. Things that have been in my collection for a year and I have used them 1 or 2 times, like there's absolutely no reason for them to stay. So I kind of went into it with the mindset of this is going to help me determine what I use and what I don't use. My goal this year was to use all of my eyeshadow palettes at least 8 times. And if I'm not using them 8 times, then I also don't really feel like I need to hang on to them. Going into the year, I had around, it was between 20 and 25 eyeshadow palettes. So if you take 8, okay, you're gonna watch me math. 8 times 20, that's like 160 uses. So I would be able to use, yeah, I think that would be the right way to do it. Math is not my strong suit, but I'm pretty sure that would be the right way to do it. So like, I would just need 160 days to use everything 8 times. And if I did that, that's like half-ish of a year. So more than enough time considering I wear makeup 5 to 7 days a week. So I felt like that would be very like an obtainable goal. And like I said, if I wasn't loving it or not using it that many times, I don't need to keep it. One of the things I did implement, actually, I guess we can talk about that later. Let's just hop into the actual palette tracking as of right now. I'm filming this on June 25th, 2024, and my palette tracker is currently up to date with the look on my face and everything I've used. So here is the first slide. Finally, I know. And I just titled it in my notes app. I titled it Palette Usage Tracker because I was like, what is going to be the easiest way for me personally to ensure that I'm documenting this daily and not forgetting or not being like inconvenienced so much that I don't follow through on doing it. I know Lee uses a app to track hers. I know a lot of people track usage on paper, but I just don't see myself like every day pulling out a notebook and writing this in it or whatever. Like I just know that I personally will not follow through with that. So I was like, what is going to be the best for me to actually stick to it? And that was just creating a notes in my notes app on my iPhone. I broke it down into a few different categories. I have some larger collections, so I wanted to break it down that way by like brand. And as I went through the year and decluttered, I've obviously rearranged. I initially started making just little tallies, but then I saw after I got to like 5, it was hard to see. So then I switched to marking them with like, once I got to 5, I put the number 5, and then I kept doing the tallies. I felt like that was easiest, low maintenance, not difficult to do. But then once I started getting up into the higher levels of usage, like you can see the Natasha Glam Light Face Palette, that has 18 uses. It just was more like satisfying and clearer and easier for me to personally see when I put that hard number by it. And the cool thing about the Notes app is that if you accidentally delete something or do something, you're like, oh my God, what did I just do? At the top there, it has a back button and you can just hit it and it's gonna undo whatever you just did. And that was big for me because like sometimes I got these crazy little thumbs. So I was like, I need something that I can easily correct if I mess it up and I won't lose track of the number of uses that I have. So that's another feature the Notes app has that I really liked and I thought it would make it easier for me. I also wanted to, like I said, I broke it down into some categories, and I like how in this app particularly you can customize things a little bit to create like some differentiation. Like when everything looks the same, I just don't operate that well. I need to have like clear and concise areas that pop to me. So for the first one, Natasha Denona, that is the first category. She's her own category because I have a lot of her palettes. And what I did is I just changed the font a little bit, bolded it, and put it in that gray thing, which is just like a feature you can do. Like at the bottom, it shows a bunch of different stuff you can do to customize this. And it was just enough to set it aside from the rest of the jumble that, hey, this is the category, Natasha Denona. And then I went in and did like the bubble, like that you can do to kind of pace it out like a list, to kind of emphasize like this is where we're at in the list. And then I listed out all the palettes. This is not the order they started in. The order they started in was like oldest palette to newest palette at the bottom. But then as I started using things more, I was like, well, I don't want to scroll to be updating the palette that I use the most. I want to put that at the top. And if you hold on to like the dot, you can just drag it. Sorry, you can't see me over there. If you hold on to the dot, you can just hold it and drag it to where you want, so you can easily move the bullet points. That's the word I was looking for so hard earlier and could not think of. But you can easily move the bullet points, which I really like, so that I can move things around as like I get more usage out of particular products. So Natasha Denona, the Glam Light Face Palette is the most used out of my Natasha palettes currently. I've used that 18 times this year. What counts as a use to me? Anytime I reach into that palette. This one is a face palette, so if I'm using the blush or the highlighter, it doesn't count. It's just the eyeshadows, right? So if I do a whole look with my Dream palette and then I reach into Retro for a shimmer, I count that as a use in both palettes. I don't necessarily have to create a whole look with the palette. I'm just like, okay, I used that palette. I created some kind of a look using a shadow from it, so it counts. That just is easiest to me, and I think that's fair because it's still a usage. I'm using it, so it counts as one. That's what I did. So yeah, Glam Light, 18 uses. Biba palette, 14 uses. The Bronze palette, 13 uses. You wouldn't know. Triochrome, 6. Zendo, 4. My Dream, 4. Retro, 4. Gold, 4. Pastel, 5. It was at 4, which is why it's down there, but then I used it today. Star, 3. I Need a Nude, 4. The Sunset, 2. And the Glam Deep Face Palette, 2. So this is like very enlightening to me as to what I just organically reach for a lot, because in my mind, the Natasha Denona My Dream palette is one of my favorites from her brand, but I've only used it 4 times. The same with the Star palette. That is one of my favorites, and I've only used it 3 times. Whereas like, you know, Glam, Light, Biba, and Bronze, those are the top front runners. I knew they would be. They were, I think they were my front runners last year as well, but Star was right up there. And it very could, like once we get into the cooler months, I will probably be reaching for Star a lot more. But anyways, it's just been very enlightening to see what I am reaching for and what I'm using and what I'm not. It just like gives me a lot to think about moving forward with not only new purchases, but like what I want to hang on to, which is why like Sunset, I've only done 2 looks with it and I love those looks, but I'm like, I've only used it twice in almost 7 months. Like that is like gooped and gagged. I'm like, oh my God. The same with like Star, and like it just shows like how neglected some products can get. So that was very like, but it's also a really nice tool to look at too. And I'm like, I don't really know what I want to use, so what I want to use, what I want to pull out, and I can go and see, okay, what haven't I used? And then I can look at the tallies and see, okay, I've used Sunset twice. I'm going to pull out the Sunset palette today. So it also helps me in that way too, and kind of exploring my own collection and shopping my stash and what I want to use. But yeah, that is the current tracking for my Natasha Denona palettes. The next category is Other. It used to be Huda Beauty, but then I have had to declutter the majority of those palettes so they don't have their own category anymore. But it's Other, and this is any other brand of eyeshadow palette that I have in my collection. So have ABH Primrose, I've used that 10 times. Huda Empowered, I've used that 12 times. Tom Ford Body Heat, 5. Tom Ford Honeymoon, 5. Wander Beauty Trailblazer, 4. Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes, 3. Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk, 2. Makeup by Mario Natural Mattes, or Master Mattes, sorry, 2. Pat McGrath Quad, 2. Makeup by Mario, I think it was the Cool Tone Mattes. I have not used that at all yet. So those are like all my other palettes in my collection currently that I have, and that is the tracking on those and what I have used. As you can see, the ABH Primrose and Huda Empowered are like right behind the Natasha Denona, Glam Light, Biba, and Bronze. So those are kind of all like my top used palettes right now in my collection, which is like also interesting to see, because I feel like how there's just been a lot of like trends and waves and flows, like what I've been using a lot, and it's interesting to see like what my top 5 are so far throughout the year that I have used. The next category is my singles. And I wanted to include these because I've kind of brought in a lot of singles this year, and I'm notorious for not using singles. So I thought it would be really enlightening and helpful to track the singles. And some of them, I've used them a lot more than I thought I would or had anticipated. So I have the Victoria Beckham single, which I was about to show you, but I don't need to show you guys. I've used that one 8 times. I've used the Half Magic Glitter Puck 3 times. That's it. That's why I still don't know like my thoughts on it. And then I've used my Hourglass single twice, my Danessa Myrick single twice, and my Ace Beauté Liquid Shadow 1 time. So this is like, that is the layout of my current collection, how many times I have used everything. And I just think it's going to be really, really beneficial for looking at the end of the year and being like, what am I using? What am I not using? Now the next category, I don't believe that Lee did this, but I could be wrong. I might have just been focused on initially what she was doing. But I also decided that I wanted to keep a category open and available to me to see my decluttered items, because I felt like it was really important to include these decluttered palettes, because even though they're no longer in my collection, they still took uses away from other palettes. And I think like that's a big thing where it's like, I used this palette this many times, I didn't love it and I got rid of it. Those 10 uses could have been used on like my Star palette or my Biba palette, something like that, you know? So it's just kind of enlightening to see where else those uses could have been like allocated to. But also at the end of the year, I didn't want to be like, how do I only have this many like tallies like that? I wore makeup way more than that. Well, a third of my usage went to palettes that are now decluttered and no longer in my collection, which is kind of why I've been a lot more stingy about what I keep and don't keep, because it's just more eye-opening into like, these were wasted uses that I could have been using it on something that like I love. So I wanted to keep it. I wanted to be able to see it ready and available, because it just like also makes me feel like on some of these, like I did try, I used it and it just was not good, or it was expired or whatever. It goes to show that like I was still actively like trying to use this product. So in the decluttered category, we have a handful. We have the Danessa Myricks Groundwork palette, 11. I used that 11 times this year. The Huda Beauty Naughty Nude, 10. Mercury Retrograde from Huda, 7. Dominique Cosmetics, I forget what that palette was even called. I used it 4 times. The Spooked palette from Gourmand Girls, 4 times. The Ace Beauté palette, Mystic Romance, 4 times. Huda Beauty Khaki Haze, I used that 3 times. The Natasha Denona Alloy palette, 3 times. The Ciate I Am Woman, 3 times. Huda Beauty Rose Quartz, 3 times. And then also the Natasha Denona Glam palette, 1 time. Life of the Party Quad, 1 time. So yeah, that is what? That is approximately 56 uses out of palettes that have been decluttered, which is almost 2 whole months of makeup. Or more than 2 months if I didn't do it every single day. Like, thinking about that is crazy. Like, I decluttered 2 months or more worth of eyeshadow looks. Like, isn't that weird to just like think about and let it set in? Like, wild. That's why with like some palettes that I'm feeling like about, but not like, I don't feel like I want to declutter them, but I don't love them or reach for them. That's why when I look at this, I feel more like, you know, I should just let it go because I'm wasting usages. Like, I'm pretty sure my Huda Beauty and Powder palette is expiring because I have some shadows not performing well. And I've already used it 12 times. And I was going back and forth on, well, should I keep trying to use it and get as much use out of it as I can? Or cut my losses? Because, I mean, I'm already 12 uses deep. And I definitely don't think it's going to last throughout the year. So it's like, you know, those uses could go towards something else that I enjoy. But yeah, I don't know. That was just like my thoughts. I wanted to share with you guys like where I was with this like usage tracker, how many times I've worn eyeshadow this year. I can actually pop it up there like a total, but I just felt like it was very interesting to see what all I have worn, how many times I have worn it, including the decluttered items. And I think it will be even more interesting when we get to the end of 2024 and see how many decluttered usage we have, but also like it will very clearly show like my top 5 used eyeshadow palettes, which I really like. And I've enjoyed it so much that I kind of thought, do I want to track other usage things too? But I honestly, that just feels very overwhelming and a lot to keep track of. And even though it would be interesting, I just don't think that it's something I would realistically be able to stick to. I know some people do it, but I just don't think that that would be for me. I think tracking my eyeshadow, though, has been very beneficial and eye-opening, and I'm going to continue to do it. So yeah, if you have any questions, leave them below. If you do something similar, let me know. I'm really interested if you want to get started on doing this and have, like, I don't know, questions as to how I set it up, or, you know, what counts as what. Like, I'd be more than happy to chat about it. I just thought that this was really insightful, and I'm so happy that I saw Lee doing this on her page, because it really just inspired me, and I have loved it, and I plan to continue to do it. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful, or at the very least interesting. I am gonna go ahead and hop off here, and yeah, just leave me your thoughts below in general about tracking and all of that stuff. I'm very interested. But I will see you guys in my next video. I hope you have a great day. Bye.